Hello and welcome back to Johncast. In this week's episode, we're talking about Prince Harry, his latest court battle in the UK, and, well, the not-so-easy relationship he has with his family. Then we'll dive into some really useful English vocabulary and phrases all about family. Remember, you'll find the full transcript for this podcast on my Telegram channel, or if you click on the link in the description, you can download it directly. So let's get into it. So Prince Harry is back in the news. Now, you might remember that he left the royal family and gave up royal duties back in 2020 when he and his wife, Meghan Markle, moved to the United States. But when he stepped away from royal duties and being a working royal, he also had to give up certain privileges and perks, one of which was security protection while in the UK. So now if Harry decides to come back to the UK with his family, he's not entitled to free security protection. Now, this is something that he was very unhappy about, and in fact, he decided to take the British government to court as a way of overturning the original decision. However, the courts ruled against Harry and said that the original decision was fair and lawful. Now, this means that if Harry decides to return to the UK at any point with his family, he's not entitled to free security protection. Now, some of you might say that's fair enough, he's no longer living there, he shouldn't be entitled to it. But others would argue that he was born into this family and they need protecting as well because they're at greater risk than ordinary civilians. So it's a tricky and complicated case. But when you step back and look at it, it's not just about this security protection. It's another crack in what was already a pretty fragile relationship that Harry has, now not just with the British institutions or public, but with his own family. His relationship with his father, King Charles, his brother, Prince William, there's a lot of pain here, it seems, at least from the outside. Much of this pain stems from the fact that a couple of years ago, Harry decided to air his family's dirty laundry in public by publishing a book, a memoir, if you will, and also a Netflix documentary in which he openly discussed aspects of the royal family, relationships, and all that jazz. I imagine that King Charles, Prince William, and others took offense to this airing of dirty laundry in public, and as a result, this put a major strain on their relationship. As far as I'm aware, they're not even on speaking terms. So this little case about the security detail, I think it kind of points to a bigger story here, and that is the tit for tat that the King and Prince William have with Harry. Clearly, they're still quite resentful over his decision to leave the royal family, and as a result, they have no intention of giving up anything in return, considering that Harry rejected royal duties and royal life in the first place. Now, for me, looking at it from the outside, and especially given that I'm Irish and we don't really care much for monarchies and the royal family, I mean, it's hard not to feel like Harry is caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, he wants to live his life freely and make his own choices and decide that the royal life is not for me. I prefer to do my own thing. However, he's a prince by blood, and I guess that means that he has certain responsibilities. So there are some people who agree with Harry and his decisions and his autonomy and his quest for independence. But there are others that argue he has a duty of responsibility to his family, to Britain, and especially given the fact that he has benefited so much over the years from being a royal. It's a very tricky relationship and situation, but I'm curious to know what you think. Do you think that they can make up and bury the hatchet? Can they rebuild that trust that was once so strong? Or do you think too much damage has already been done? I know this story interests a lot of people because at the end of the day, it's a family drama that is playing out on the public stage. So, I'd love to hear what you think. By all means, leave a comment and tell me whose side are you on, or what do you make of this situation between Prince Harry and his family? Now, this is the perfect opportunity to explore some really useful English vocabulary all about family matters. So thank you, Harry, for that. We're going to dive into some words and expressions that you'll hear people talk about when talking about family life. The good times, the bad times, relationships, and everything in between. So let's jump into that. Now, to explore a lot of this vocabulary, we're going to use the royal family as an example, because they're one of the most famous families in the world and they come with a lot of drama. Now, from the outside, the royal family has always looked like a close-knit family. They seem, quite tight and that not much comes between them. And you would think that after everything they've been through, blood would be thicker than water, right? And that, family sticks together. But unfortunately, real life isn't a fairy tale, even for royals. Now, as we remember, Prince Diana was very fond of her children, and you could say that both of them were the apple of her eye. Even though Harry is not exactly the spitting image of Diana, in fact, I think he looks very like King Charles. You could say he's the spitting image of King Charles. I think in attitude, they're very, very alike. That fiery spirit that Harry possesses and Diana demonstrated seems to run in the family. Growing up, he and William were side by side. We remember it from TV pictures and photographs. They were brought up together, both born with a silver spoon in their mouth. So born into privilege, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, it seemed only natural that both sons would follow in their father and mother's footsteps and take their places in royal life. And while they did follow in their footsteps to begin with, they served in the military like their father and then they carried out royal duties. Now, Harry has broken with that tradition and no longer follows in his father's footsteps. Prince William, on the other hand, clearly does, and he obviously has a lot of respect for tradition and his duties as a member of the royal family. I mean, this relationship between Harry and William from the outside is fascinating. It's crystal clear that they are like chalk and cheese, very different in character. Harry is this fiery, independent character, whereas William seems more demure, reserved, and traditional. Definitely like chalk and cheese. And in recent years, we've seen how they clash and fall out and eventually grow apart. And unfortunately, it has played out on the public stage with Harry's publication, documentaries, and so on. The royal family, on the other hand, prefer to keep things private. You'll never see them airing their dirty laundry in public, unlike Harry, which I felt personally was a little bit unfair for him to discuss private matters in such a public space. Now, I'm sure that the royal family have plenty of skeletons in their closet and they probably like to sweep things under the rug and not air their dirty laundry, but there's always one black sheep in a family, right? And Harry seems to be that black sheep in the royal family. So this situation is hardly surprising. A lot of people will say, they have all the money in the world and I have no sympathy for them. But I think relationships are relationships and people have feelings, and I do feel a sense of pity towards them, especially given the fact that they lost their mother when they were kids, and nobody likes to see families being torn apart by, broken relationships and all that jazz. So this begs the question, will they ever make up? Will they bury the hatchet, let bygones be bygones, and find their way back to each other? That remains to be seen, but for now, at least, it seems quite unlikely that they're going to build bridges again. At the end of the day, royal family or not, titles or responsibilities or not, family is your own flesh and blood. And okay, every family, as I said, has its skeletons and we all have our moments where we clash and fall out and grow apart. But I think that both sides need to sit down together and say, look, let's put this behind us. This is water under the bridge and move on with our lives. Okay, so some of you might be feeling overwhelmed with all of that vocabulary, phrases, idioms, etc. But we'll break it down slowly. And remember, you have the transcript and the PDF with notes to review in your own time. Okay, so first let's talk about family closeness. I started by saying that the royal family seemed to be a close-knit family, right? The pronunciation is important, a close-knit family. So knit obviously comes from knitting fabric, where all of the threads are knitted closely together. So if you imagine a close-knit family is a family that is tightly connected, like a handmade jumper. Families stick together. Okay, this obviously comes from the idea that glue forms tight bonds and connections. So families, like glue, stick together. We got to stick together. We also saw blood is thicker than water. Now, this is a pretty old proverb, probably from the Bible or something like that. And blood here represents family ties and the idea that those ties are stronger than other relationships outside of the family. So I'm sure that King Charles said to Harry at some point, "Ew, Harry, Blood is thicker than water, don't you forget that. That is my failed attempt at a royal British accent. And also, your own flesh and blood was another expression I used near the end. Your own flesh, your skin, your human meat, flesh. Your own flesh and blood. So this phrase has been used for centuries, and it means like the people who share your body and bloodline, your heritage, your lineage, your own flesh and blood. Oh, Harry, blood is thicker than water. Remember, we are your own flesh and blood. So just to recap, a close-knit family, families stick together, blood is thicker than water, and your own flesh and blood. Now, let's discuss favourites and similarities. I started by saying that the kids were the apple of Diana's eye. So when someone is the apple of your eye, it's the centre of your attention and your love and focus. The apple of my eye, you're the apple of my eye. This comes from Old English, actually, where apple referred to the central part of your eye that we now call pupil. But when we say someone is the apple of your eye, they're the center of your attention, your affection, your love, and your favoritism. Then, if you remember, I said the spitting image. So Harry is the spitting image of his father. When you're very like someone, you say, oh my God, you're the spitting image. It's a very vivid, old expression, but it's still used to this day. Put simply, you can just say you're very alike. Or you can say take after. Now, take after is more for specific characteristics. It's when you inherit something like, okay, I have the same color eyes as my mother, so I take after my mother. We have the same eyes or the same eye color. And character, if you're creative like your father, you could say, I take after my father in terms of creativity. So again, spitting image, very alike, or take after. You can also say that a quality or trait runs in the family, okay? It flows through the family, through generations, like a river or bloodstream, okay? A nice natural image. So, for example, patience runs in the family, or fiery nature runs in their family. I also mentioned that they were born, Harry and William, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. So, in the old days, long ago, wealthy children who were born into wealth and privilege, were christened or baptized with silver spoons. So from this, we have the expression to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth, to be born into wealth and luxury. Out of interest, out of curiosity, what do you say in your language? Is it a silver spoon or something else? And lastly, I mentioned about Harry and William following in their parents' or father's footsteps. Okay, when you follow in someone's footsteps, it means you follow their journey. So, if your parents were doctors and you become a doctor, you follow in your parents' footsteps. While Prince William follows in his father's footsteps now, Prince Harry once did, but no longer does, because he has left his royal duties, right? Okay, so let's do a quick recap. We had the apple of your eye, the favorite, the center of your attention, the spitting image of someone, when you're very alike physically. You can take after someone in terms of a certain characteristic or quality or aspect. Things run in the family. They flow through the family. They run. You can be born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You're born into privilege and luxury. And finally, you follow in someone's footsteps. Okay, don't forget the preposition. William has followed in Charles's footsteps. Now, to talk about conflict and differences, we saw that Harry and William are like chalk and cheese. I know, such a strange expression, right? Like chalk and cheese. Practice the pronunciation of that as well. Like chalk and cheese, chalk and cheese, chalk and cheese. So when two people are very, very different in character, chalk that teachers write with on a blackboard, chalk is dry and dusty, and cheese is rich and creamy. So Harry and William are like chalk and cheese. They're opposite characters. That expression is used quite a lot. I hear it a lot. You can say we are like chalk and cheese, or you can say we are chalk and cheese. Interestingly, if you want to say that you're very similar in character, you can say we are cut from the same cloth. So you could say that William and Charles are cut from the same cloth in terms of their personality, but maybe in appearance, I think William takes after Diana, so they are cut from the same cloth in terms of appearance. Then we saw the verb to clash, like the band, one of my favorite bands, The Clash. And when two people clash, they fight. they collide emotionally. And I mentioned that it seems that William and Harry clash a lot. Something similar to clash is to fall out. Clash suggests a sudden, loud battle, between two people. But to fall out means that two friends argue and perhaps they stop speaking or the relationship becomes somewhat broken. So often when you fall out, you are no longer on speaking terms. And it seems, at least from the outside, that William and Harry clashed and fell out, and as a result, they are no longer on speaking terms. The other phrasal verb I mentioned there was to grow apart. So if you imagine like plants growing away from each other in separate directions, they're growing apart. And this can happen in relationships, whether it's with a sibling, like in Harry and William's case, or in a relationship, a romantic relationship, you can grow apart from the other person. So we grew apart and we're no longer so close. For example, it seems we have grown apart. We're not as close as we used to be. Just to recap that conflict and difference vocabulary, we had like chalk and cheese, two people who are very, very different in character. Those brothers are like chalk and cheese. We also saw cut from the same cloth when you're very, very similar, very alike. That could be in character or appearance. Then we saw to clash, meaning to fight, to collide emotionally. Fall out, if you remember, was when two people argue, big fight perhaps, and then they no longer speak. And finally, grow apart was to become more distant over time, like two plants growing in separate ways. We have grown apart, or the two brothers grew apart over the years. Now, something that Prince Harry perhaps should have thought of was keeping family secrets. You can keep things private, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? Keep it private. You can also sweep something under the rug. So if you imagine that you have a rug in your family house, and instead of cleaning the dirt properly, you decide to hide it. So you sweep it with the brush under the rug, and you pretend that there's no dirt, there's no drama, you've hidden your problems. Now, the opposite to sweeping problems under the rug is to do the opposite in quite a dramatic way, which is to air your dirty laundry. So if you imagine that you're washing dirty clothes outside and you hang them up to dry, even though they're still dirty, you are clearly showing your dirty laundry, something so personal, in a public space or where other people can observe them. So you're airing your private problems publicly. That's a great phrase, So Harry, with his Oprah interview, the book, the Netflix documentary series, he decided to air the family's dirty laundry. And in doing so, he revealed a few skeletons in the closet. When you have a skeleton in the closet, it means that you've got like some family secret or something that you would rather sweep under the rug and not air it in public, like the dirty laundry. So let's recap keeping family secrets and vocabulary related to it. We have keep things private, sweep something under the rug, very literal expression. Air your dirty laundry, and a skeleton in the closet or in your closet. And last but not least, making peace. So I mentioned a nice phrasal verb there, which was to make up. When you fix a relationship after fighting, falling out, after clashing, you can decide to make up, to reconcile with the other person. If you want to be more idiomatic with that, you could say bury the hatchet. This comes from Native American history where they literally buried weapons to mark the end of the war. So you could argue here that it's time William and Harry made up, or it's time they buried the hatchet. The other phrase, which is much less common, is to let bygones be bygones. Now, a bygone is something that has gone by. It's in the past. So the idea of letting bygones be bygones is letting the past stay in the past. So let bygones be bygones. The past is the past. We should move on, make up, bury the hatchet, and make peace. I also briefly touched upon two bridge idioms. One of them was build bridges. So when there's like a gap or division, building bridges can connect two sides or reconnect them. So this is a very visual, very powerful image of building bridges. We must build bridges, not burn them. And the other one related to bridge was water under the bridge. Obviously, water flows under a bridge and moves on. Just like old problems should flow away and be left behind. Imagine you had a falling out with someone in your family and you decide to make up and you say, oh, well, all of that old drama, that's water under the bridge now. So just to recap on making peace, to make up, to repair what was broken, so a relationship, William and Harry must make up. Bury the hatchet, like from Native American wartime. They should bury the hatchet. It's time they buried the hatchet. Let bygones be bygones. Remember, it's gone by. It's in the past, so let bygones be bygones. Build bridges, don't burn them. Oh, that's in the past now. It's all water under the bridge. Okay, a lot of vocabulary and expressions to take in, to assimilate. A lot of vocabulary to take in. But I feel that these are all the phrases and expressions you need to speak about family in a proper way and in a way that really can convey the sense of characters, that can convey the different characters, the relationships, the problems, the ups, the downs, you name it. Remember, check the PDF, review the vocabulary, listen back to this podcast again if you want, as many times as you want, just to reinforce that vocabulary. And try to use it, try to put it into practice. You could come up with sentences, write some examples using each one yourself that apply to your own family, or use it in conversation with a friend or a colleague or a classmate. Who is the apple of your eye? Or are you like chalk and cheese? Do you clash often? Why don't you bury the hatchet? Do you agree that blood is thicker than water? Okay, so lots of examples of questions to get you thinking, to give you food for thought, and to give you all of the right language when it comes to talking about family life. Okay, folks, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for your attention. Thanks to Prince Harry and the royal family for their inspiration. It's probably the only time I'll ever express my gratitude to the royal family, being an Irishman. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the mix of real-world news and useful family expressions, and maybe you've picked up a few new phrases that you can start using yourself. And remember, don't worry if you don't remember everything right away or if you feel like this is so much to take in. This is a journey. It's not a race. Take your time. Go over the vocabulary, listen back, and you'll get it eventually. So until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep learning.